Grandpa Lobo on the drum. Yeah.
technology person anymore.
He did.
Yeah, we're
we
good.
have it muted.
Of the Board of School Directors. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Baez.
Present.
Director Miller.
Here.
Director O'Halloran.
Present.
Director Woodward.
Here.
And Chair Taylor.
Present.
We have 5 present.
Thank you. At this time, we will have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our listening audience.
Esta junta escolar será transmitida en español para aquellas personas que lo requieran. Si usted requiere escuchar esta junta en español, por favor marque al teléfono 312-626-6799 y poner el número de la junta, que es el 958-7180-3297. Le repito, si quiere escuchar esta junta en español, marque al 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de la junta, 958-7180-3297. Gracias.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Please remember to mute your microphone so it does not interfere. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Due to the contingencies of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are holding this meeting virtually. Board members are participating remotely and the Central Service Building is closed to the public. However, in order to allow as much public participation as possible, in addition to our normal practice of broadcasting our meetings on radio station WYMS 88.9 FM and live streaming them on the MPS website, we are broadcasting the meeting on MPS YouTube screen, the link to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Items of business. For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Individuals who wish to speak on tonight's items were required to register in advance. I ask those who are waiting to speak to remain on the platform until you are called upon to speak. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests are to be directed towards the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. All speakers are asked to state their name and spell their last name before proceeding with their comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. To ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind, including inappropriate language, will not be tolerated. The chair reserves the right to remove anyone engaging in such behavior from this platform. Those removed from the platform may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the platform. Written testimony may be submitted to the Office of Board Governors, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda, items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting esb.milwaukee, spelled all the way out, .k12.wi.us. Thank you. Madam Secretary, what is the first item of business on tonight's agenda?
The first item is item number 1, the report with possible action regarding data and progress associated with the Office of Civil Rights report. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Superintendent.
Good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the committee, members of the board. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. At this time, I would ask that Mr. Matthew Boswell provide a brief overview of the report that's before us, and after which we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Mr. Boswell.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the committee. Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Service. Attached to this item, you will find our monthly update on the 10 requirements with our resolution number 05-14-5003 in reference to the board directives of layout in reference to reporting this monthly item. As previously stated, items 1 and 8 have been identified by the Office of Civil Rights as completed as of March 2019. Requirement 6, updates were submitted to the Office for Civil Rights in 2019, and we are awaiting a response in terms of action. As a result, I will be briefly touching on requirement 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, and 10, and detailing any benchmark and timelines associated with such requirement. So for requirement 2, early identification of students at risk for behavioral difficulties and early interventions. All schools are documenting classroom behaviors and infinite campus as PLP classroom behavior notes, and utilizing the data to identify tier 1 trends and early intervention for students at risk for behavioral difficulties. As of October 30th, 2020, there were 272 students with a documented tier 2 behavior intervention, including check-in, check-out, social academics, instructional groups, and other research-based interventions. Benchmark and timeline for early identification of students at risk states by November 30th, 2020, documented tier 2 interventions will increase by 10%, supporting students identified for early intervention. Requirement 3, outreach to students. All traditional middle school, high school students have a student discipline committee meeting monthly to discuss student outcomes, recommendations, and student selected topics. These topics have included recommendations for virtual learning and focus on student selected topics, including several other topics related to student conduct, etc. For benchmark for requirement 3, by November 30th, 2020, 100% of traditional middle high schools will submit their meeting minutes for 2 virtual student discipline committee meetings in which specific student recommendations and student interest topics were discussed. Requirement 4, outreach to district staff. All schools have identified district work groups who meet monthly to analyze school discipline data and implement best practices to support student discipline and address disproportionality. Benchmark and timeline. By November 30th, 2020, 100% of traditional MPS schools will submit their discipline work group meeting minutes, including school-specific next steps and recommendations for support to address disproportionality. Requirement 5, outreach to community members. We are hosting our first monthly community conversations tomorrow, November 11th, 2020, from 6 to 7 p.m. We also would like to thank board governance for helping advertise this very important conversations. Sessions has been advertised through Thursday Update, social media, district champion, and district email, as well as through the Department of Communications in reference to our monthly meetings and the meeting tomorrow. Benchmark and timeline. By November 11, 2020, all schools will have an administrator and parent coordinator attend community conversations discussing improving outcomes for all students in Milwaukee Public Schools. Requirement 6, as stated, is not addressed at this time. It's been sent out to the Office of Civil Rights, and we're waiting a response. Requirement 7, Staff professional development. You will see a table sampling some professional development offered to MPS staff. This is not all of the professional development that we have in the district. This is a short sample and snapshot of opportunities throughout October. All professional development is being conducted virtually, is available to enroll through LMS, and is shared with staff through Thursday updates and other district communications. Requirement 9 is data evaluation. You will find a table outlining all behavior referrals from October 1st, 2020 through October 30th, 2020 across the district. Referrals are listed by behavior events, by race, and a listing of administrative resolutions used. To date, we had 64 total incidents, and they are broken down by associated race. And then 10, requirement 10. We have engaged in a variety of activities within our district response plan that have been planned and carried out through October. The district culture and climate toolkit is currently being updated with supports for virtual learning and best practices in addressing disproportionality. And this will be available to all schools in November, this November. As well as we have recently completed a virtual discipline process for schools to just better align our student code of conduct. Benchmarks and timelines. By November 30th, 2020, all school discipline champions will receive the MPS Culture and Climate Toolkit and share with all staff members at their school as an additional support in building a positive learning climate in virtual setting. By November 30th, 2020, all Courageous Conversations about Race and other book cohorts will hold 2 additional meetings utilizing the framework to discuss the role of race in the climate and discipline in virtual education district-wide. By November 30th, 2020, school psychologists will engage in 3 sessions of anti-racist universal support training to provide additional support to students. Thank you, and at this time, we are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. If it's okay with the committee, I wanted to go to the public comments. So we can all do like a thumbs up. That would be fine. Thank you. Madam Secretary.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we do have 10 pieces of written testimony on this item, and we do have 4 individuals who have registered to speak on item number 1. The first speaker on the platform would be Dana Graves. Please state your name. Hello, please state your name. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Okay, it looks like Ms. Graves is not on the platform. The next speaker on the platform would be Larry Hoffman. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Okay, Mr. Larry Hoffman. It does show that he is on the platform, and we're having difficulty with the sound.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry. Larry Hoffman, Hoffman. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
to have an opportunity to speak once again at a PACE meeting on this topic. I support Micah's testimony on this item. Speaking as a career educator, I would add the following. First of all, Mr. Boswell's report without any visuals was pretty hard to follow. The reports we're seeing each month from the administration provide schedules and promised activities, but they seem to lack detailed plans or evidence of how the activities have been carried out so far. Without detail, How can you or the community feel confident about the administration's commitment or its ability to follow through completely? I'm also concerned that staff development initiatives about equity and racial bias that we've expected to happen district-wide appear to have involved only a small portion of schools or educators. I don't understand why that's moving so slowly. I haven't heard about any progress from the student discipline committees. What's happened to their recommendations? Is anything going on with them anymore? I'm quite sure there are kids at home who are bored to tears with their online schoolwork. I imagine for some kids, participating in discipline committees could make their day seem a little more relevant. And lastly, I've seen a flyer for online discussions of classroom conduct. I believe Mr. Boswell made reference to this. Given the lack of adequate publicity and follow-up on earlier community discussions, I wonder whether these discussions will follow the same pattern, or whether any ideas that come out will actually be utilized. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform would be Jane Audette. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very faintly.
It said that I was muted.
You're not muted. We can hear you. Is there a way to turn up the volume? It may be that you are away from the microphone. Is there a way to pull the microphone closer?
It's really close. How's that?
It still sounds low, Madam Secretary.
Yes. And our volume is way.
Is the speaker on a cell phone or laptop? It may be the volume that needs to be turned up a little bit. Just want to ensure that we can hear Miss Audette.
Okay, now it appears that the device is muted.
You unmuted me. This is Bill Audette. We're in the same room, and we each have testimony.
Okay. Is it possible for Jane to speak on this device?
We're across the room from each other.
Okay. We will mute you. We will mute your microphone and mute your call and go to the next call, which would then be. Okay, we're getting a message from technology that there can only be one caller on one device at a time. So if you would like to give your testimony, Mr. Audette is the next person on the queue to give testimony. And then if we could ask Miss Jane Audette to call back into the platform.
Okay, that would be great. And it was one more other speaker. Did it ever show that speaker being on the platform at all?
We would have one more speaker on the platform on this item after the Audettes.
All right, thank you. So are we going with, just for clarity's sake, in case people are listening to, are we going with Mr. Audette at this moment and then having Miss Audette call back in, Madam Secretary?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, that is the direction that technology is giving. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bill Audette, please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Bill Audette, A-U-D-E-T-T-E. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Superintendent Posley, Committee Chair Director Taylor, and members of the committee. I am grateful to the leadership of the PACE Committee for the regular updates from the administration on work intended to abolish oppressive white supremacy culture prevalent in MPS. Currently, MPS continues to demonstrate a lack of real commitment to our Black and Brown students and shows no real sense of urgency in confronting systemic racial oppression. This was evident in a recent PACE meeting when Dr. Posley stated to the effect that no additional reporting was being done to the OCR. To hear this from the superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools, a school system that has documented race issues and has been cited by the Office for Civil Rights, is dumbfounding and very telling about how the administration doesn't want to address racism. In October and November updates, the administration did not report on benchmarks for the monitoring of the 2020 OCR plan. Consider that this is the third year that the MPS disciplinary manager has developed an OCR plan. The first 2 years, the plans were never presented to the board or to the public. This year, the community input resulted in the board finally being provided the full report and having the 2020 and 2021 OCR plan communicated to them. This committee needs to ask itself why the administration doesn't want to report the current OCR metrics against the benchmarks. Could it be that the administration is just giving lip service to the systemic racial oppression within the district? And finally, it is obvious that the administration hasn't put forth a coordinated effort to address the systemic racial oppression within the district, and in fact, is doing the bare minimum. It's time to break down silos within MPS, stop the oppressive leadership, and
30
address
seconds.
the race issue with an all hands on deck mentality. Let's consider all three items on tonight's agenda as an example. I don't understand how they can be considered separate topics when all three of these issues should be interwoven as part of the district's efforts to combat racism. The race issue within MPS will not go away until it is fully addressed, and the community expects more from MPS administration and the school.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform would be Jane Audette. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Okay, it looks like Miss Audette is dialing back in. We will go to the next speaker, who is Angela Lucas Foley. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Angela, C-A-S, F as in Frank, O-L-E-Y.
Thank you.
As a white woman, proud district employee, and parent of a student in MPS, I am concerned about the language referenced in the monthly disproportionality report, resolution with the Office for Civil Rights, October 1st through October 30th. While this report is more specific than the report presented at last month's PACE meeting, I still have concerns. The Office of Civil Rights resolution was in response to system-wide discriminatory practices towards our Black male students. People make up systems. Though efforts for staff professional development are outlined in this report, my questions are as follows. Where is the system-wide approach? Where are the minutes and action steps from the district discipline disproportionality leadership team? Where is the alignment of district messaging? In the world of functional behavioral assessments, one often talks about a replacement behavior to gradually make obsolete the problem behavior. In this vein, what is the district's replacement behavior when it comes to the Office of Civil Rights resolution? Who is leading the work? What tools is that leader being given to make the school year 2021 OCR plan come to life? We need a truly coordinated approach that starts with administration to truly examine the systems in place that are producing discriminatory practices for our Black and brown youth.
Thank you. It looks as if we are trying to get Miss Audette back onto the platform. Madam Chair, if you'd like to go to committee members while we are logging on, we can come back to the speaker once they are on the platform.
All right, thank you for that. Let me know, Madam Secretary. Committee members, any questions, comments on this item? Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I do have a couple questions, starting with the student disciplinary committee or student discipline committee meetings. Somebody in one of our written testimonies said that there was originally a meeting that was planned in November, but then it was postponed to December. Would the superintendent or anybody in the administration be able to comment on the exact date for that, when it will be rescheduled? And then also if we can expect to hear, I'm sorry, I may be mixing up the two things. One is the student discipline committees. There was recommendations and minutes that are supposed to be submitted. That was one of the benchmarks. I apologize. So is that, are those minutes and recommendations going to be provided to the board or to the public? I'll just leave that one there.
That one for now. All right, Superintendent.
Director Halloran and members of the committee. Yes, in terms of, I guess the minutes, as the benchmarking timeline is laid out, we will report that information to the board during next month's cycle. So this benchmarking timeline will move from month to month. So we'll take the information from November 1, go to November 30th and report that to you guys in December. We'll take the December timeline and benchmark from December 1 to December 30th and report that to you guys in January. So this will be a month-to-month report from this point forward. And I just want to make sure to understand that when we are aligning benchmarking timelines, we have to give a consistent beginning date and a consistent ending date. As of the last PACE meeting, which was basically kind of in the middle of the month, we couldn't get that date, so we had to go to the next month. So going forward, you will have that information, and we do have that information, but it will be benchmarked and listed within the report.
All right. Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you for that. The thing that I had mixed up was the Student Leadership Summit. Apparently that had originally been scheduled in November, and then it was moved back to December. And there was a question about if there was a date that had been settled on for that.
Thank you.
Yes,
Administration.
Yeah, Director O'Halloran, members of the committee. Yes, we were looking at a date in December, and we think we were going around the first or second week. And in reference to why it was moved back, we want to make sure that is a very huge undertaking, So that is definitely very important, the Student Leadership Summit, and we want to make sure that we do it collaboratively with all the school personnel involved with that, all the different departments. It's just a very huge undertaking to be able to collaborate and get everyone on the same page when we don't see each other every day. We have to set up multiple Zoom meetings. So we want to make sure that in delivering that is delivered of quality. Also, there will be several breakout sessions and facilitators and things of that nature that we have to set up. So it's a little bit it's more difficult than in person because you have to set up all these breakout rooms. So definitely, we did move it back to make sure that everybody was involved in planning collaboratively, so we have a unified voice.
Thank you. And I'm going to go back for a follow-up with Vice Chair O'Halloran. I just heard the dates of the first or second week in December, and I just wanted to know, do we have more of a tentative date for that, or two, just because we're like going to be mid-November?
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, yes, so we're looking at that first Friday in December as a tentative date. So definitely we'll be communicating the date once it's official and confirmed, and that will be within the coming weeks.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair O'Halloran, any follow-up, or I believe you said 3 questions, so you have one more?
Technically have 2 more, but if anybody else wants to go, I always feel like I'm asking too many questions.
No, it's great. We'll go with the one more, then rotate it and come back.
Perfect. For requirement 4, in the benchmarks and timeline, it says 100% of traditional schools. And I was just trying to understand in this context, it says by November 30th, 100% of traditional MPS schools will submit their discipline work group meeting minutes. And I was trying to understand, how do we define traditional in this sense? Is that in reference to like charter schools, or is it like partnership schools? I was just trying to understand what traditional means in this context, please.
Okay, administration.
Chair Taylor, Director O'Halloran, members of the committee, that is in reference to all traditional middle and high schools within our district.
Okay. Vice Chair O'Donnell.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
you have Director Baez in the queue.
Right. Thank you. Director Baez.
Hello. I want, first of all, to commend the administration for this ongoing reporting to us. But I look at all of the correspondence that we have received, and I'm particularly concerned about the correspondence we received from Micah. It suggests a number of things, and I have a couple of questions to ask Chair Taylor, but I want to provide a context here, and it's that what I think I'm hearing from all the things that we received is that even though we should congratulate ourselves for, sort of like sustaining this reporting and all of this, the correspondence that we get ought to be viewed not just as a critique, but as a means of improving what we're doing, of improving the reporting. When I read the documents, I said to myself, oh my gosh, people are telling us that in this particular area, we didn't do enough. In this particular area, we forgot the metrics. In this particular area, we failed to see that there's a connection between the three items that we're going to be dealing with tonight, okay? These three items deal with the overall idea of making MPS a better democratic place, a place that really listens to community, a place that listens to students, to teachers and others, and that the OCR has told us that there is a huge disproportionality here, that we need to do something about that. So I'm seeing this reporting as of necessity becoming better as we go along, thanks to the commentary that we get from the public, okay? And it ought to be viewed and taken not as a combative critique, but in the context of saying, okay, in the next report, we're going to be better because we are going to take this into account, because we're going to respond to some of the issues that have been raised before us. So coordination, is a major issue. Why are we having three items when maybe we should find a way of bringing those items together so that our thrust needs to be about ending racism, about inclusiveness, about making sure that we hear voices of the different people. The issue of the metrics, how important that is to making sure that we refine those areas so that we can, even when we produce charts, we add columns that correspond to what we're being told. For example, I would like to know as a board member, how many people participated in these sessions, okay? In the sessions that are listed. How many sessions were provided? If we go the route of doing this on a volunteer basis, what do we expect? I mean, do we expect school parent coordinators and administrators and others to mobilize their faculty, get them to meetings? So we discuss then issues with the teachers union, because there's a lot of mention about, where's the teachers union regarding the time that we use in professional development. Well, some of that is negotiated. And because it was negotiated, there may be not enough time. And since there's so many things that schools need to pick from, they may pick from all kinds of different things. So one of the issues raised is silos. Are we allowing ourselves to fall into the trap of silos that then don't allow us to, in a coordinated way, bring things together and respond to the issues before us? The issue of student voices. What have we done with the voices of students? Can we report on that? Can we say these were the recommendations that were made by students, and this is how we responded to each one of them? This is what we plan to do, a plan for each one of those areas. So my question to the administration is, if we have received these things, what are we going to do with them? How are we going to make sure that we improve the reporting that comes to us as board members, so that at board meetings, we basically echo some of those concerns that are being raised, and in a friendly way, in a constructive way, we make sure that we make this, monitoring and reporting the kind of thing that we can say to OCR, everybody is in on this. The board, the administration, the community, the teachers, etc., and we're going to increase the pace in which we do certain kinds of things. Because one of the criticisms, and I would like the administration to speak to this, is the slowness of which we do certain kinds of things. Okay. Why is that? Well, some of us as board members may know that we're dealing with many fronts at the same time, but we got a large number of people in the administration that are working on this, and there should be a pace of doing this that is more aggressive. Okay. We know we need to change the racism that exists within our system. And yet when I look at the reports, the word racism is like nowhere, it's like, yeah. Why, we know that white privilege is a problem. What are we going to do about incorporating the thinking of the people that come to us from the community perspective and are saying, you need to look at this, you need to look at that, you need to look at that. Okay. So that the next month, when we get a monthly report, because this is good that we're doing the monthly report, when we get the monthly report, it captures some of the concerns that were raised.
All right. Thank you. I believe it sounded like maybe two questions in there in the comment.
Yeah. There are about three of them. There's about three of them, but that's okay.
Yeah. Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the board, one of the things that we will say that we welcome constructive criticism. That's how we get better. That's how we make things better for our young people. That's how we make things better for our families that we serve in this district. And one of the things that every time something come our way, we respond to it. We were told that we needed to have benchmarks, timelines, a plan. We needed to have what was going to take place. All of those things are before your eyes tonight. So anything that we get, we move forward to try to address and those kinds of things. As far as stamping out racism, that's something that we all as an administration want to do. And whether you see it written on paper or not, we're still moving in that direction. And I, as the superintendent, want to do that better than anyone. I've been fighting this battle all my life. This ain't nothing new for me. And so therefore, by no means am I going to slight that. But also, we have to move people together. We have to work together to move people forward together. And I think that we have done everything that in our power to do just that. As far as the committees that are coming together, whether it's equity, whether it is the Black and Latino male office, these are all of those things, all of those offices work closely together. And this is a byproduct of the work that they do. However, I wanted to showcase all three offices and what the work they do on a quarterly basis and those kinds of things, because that is something that we want the board to be a part of. It's the reason it is laid out. But if you look at the threads through the work that we are doing, it's all offices and other offices there to make this happen. And one of our goals is to also make sure that all of our children are learning at high quality levels. And we are trying to do everything that we can to do just that. Whether we will change this world overnight, we won't do that. But we're going to give it 110% on a daily basis to make it happen.
Director Baez.
Yeah, quick follow-up.
Yes.
Maybe the superintendent should have prefaced this presentation with his statement. Okay, that's a good statement of commitment, and I appreciate very much that kind of thinking. However, when we have these commentaries by the public that are observing us, that are monitoring us, they mean something. They mean that we probably thought that we're doing well with the collaboration in terms of the district disproportionality work group, well, it's not very clear in the reporting how fast is this group moving, etc. The community conversations, the flyer, we done this before, yet we all know that the community conversations were not well attended at all, in many instances. So what are we going to do to correct that? How are we going to direct schools and staff and paraprofessionals and administrators to make sure that the next community conversations are very well attended, and that then we report back to the board on how many people attended those things so that we can improve them? I'm just suggesting, folks, how can we make sure that we improve all of this and that we hear people when they tell us, maybe you should have done this, maybe you should have done that. Not that we have all the answers and they have all the answers, just the idea that this reporting is for the good of all of us.
Thank you, Director Baez. Administration, you want to do a follow-up for his comments? We're good.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, one of the things that we heard loud and clear and that we have experienced is this whole thing around making sure that the community conversations are well attended. And in Mr. Boswell's report, he kind of talked about the idea of making sure that administrators are present, making sure the parent coordinators are present, and also asking school communities to deploy a number of families out to those locations. We have done a great job, I would say, around getting the word out. They moved the date from the 6th to the 10th, was it? 11th. The 11th, to make sure that we were able to get the message out there. I feel that it will be well attended as all of our efforts to do just that. And we are working, we have made sure that we have gone through every social media activity that we possibly could to get individuals out to the community conversations, because that is where we will gain insight of information, but also not just community conversations, anytime that we are interacting where parent coordinators, where the principals or teachers are interacting with families. It gives us this opportunity to lens in what we can do to better support families and what we can do looking at it from a disciplined standpoint of how we move forward to make sure that we are able to close this disproportionality gap that we find ourselves with.
Thank you. I do see President Miller. I just want to do a quick check-in with Madam Secretary to see were we able to get Ms. Audette back on.
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have Ms. Audette on the platform.
Thank you. President Miller, I would ask for leniency to hear Ms. Audette out since she got bumped out, then come back to committee members. Thank you.
Please do.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Audette, please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Good evening and thank you. Jane Audette, A-U-D-E-T-T-E. Chair Taylor, members of the committee, and Superintendent Posley, good evening. I'm grateful for the leadership of the Parent and Community Engagement Committee for making a monthly update on the OCR work intended to abolish white supremacy culture in MPS. The District Discipline Disproportionality Leadership Team was convened at the request of Superintendent Posley, according to records that I've seen in June of 2020, to assure that the work on the OCR resolution was supported district-wide. I appreciate that. My concern is that 5 months later, work being done by the two other offices giving updates tonight don't show any support of the OCR plan in their updates for this school year. I think I'd like to see minutes and an action plan from this leadership team to see if we can figure out where those silos are. I applaud staff who are working diligently on developing virtual staff development during the pandemic. Appreciation aside, it's not enough just to review the professional development offered. It's really imperative to see the information on how many staff are actually engaging in the learning. We need to know how anti-racism training is prioritized by our senior administration. I'm truly delighted that the student discipline committees are formed and meeting and providing minutes, but we need to know what's in those minutes. What matters to our students? What do they want to see changed? My question is, what matters? Whether minutes are submitted or whether all staff are engaged in dismantling a systemic oppression? What matters? Whether we have an impressive catalog of professional development or whether teachers are eradicating racist ideology and practices from their pedagogy. What matters? Our students' minutes or what they are crying out for us to change that marginalizes and punishes?
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for that. President Miller.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Actually, I'm glad that we were able to get Ms. Audette on before I spoke, because she did, the Education Committee of MICA did send us a report raising a lot of questions, pretty extensive stuff, and I'm glad to hear what she had to say, because her comments were very narrowed and specific, and asking, good and real questions. I guess for my consideration, I would like to see a coming together of the minds of the administration, of the MICA committee, and other folks that are part of this this work. I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
Continue, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because someone said earlier, the administration does not want to address racism. I wouldn't be having this kind of a discussion with the committee and with the administration if I didn't believe that they didn't want to address racism. Accusations don't help. But I really want to affirm what Director Baez was saying, because we have to make clear advances in this work. And I felt that some of the questions that were asked by Ms. Audette were helpful in terms of how to narrow this focus. And I would suggest that the administration have a meeting with the MICA folks and advance that, and that be part, answering some of those questions be part of next month's reporting, because I want to believe that we're all in this together for the betterment of Black, Latino, and other students of color, and all of our students, because in the fight, when you fight racism, it benefits everyone. So I want to ask of the administration that you, and I know you've done this in the past, and I know you've organized different meetings, but I'd like you to reach out to MICA at this point to deepen some of this discussion directly, so that we can help continue this work as a committee.
And I'll go to the administration, and I do want to state publicly that myself and the administration have been meeting with community groups, and MICA is actually our next group to meet with things that's going on within the community. But since you did address it to the administration, I will ask for their reply to your question and comment.
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, the administration stands ready to meet with anyone, any stakeholder that's in this city or outside of the city that wants to work with us on making things better for young people and families in this city. We are open. We have met with MICA. We have MICA on the list to meet with, along with a number of other groups that we have met with over the weeks, of talking about just these topics of how we work together, how we continue to move forward, and we will continue to embrace anyone that wants to support young people and to support the learning process.
Thank you. President Miller, any other questions or follow-up? You're muted. Madam Sec, I see his mouth. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had it on mute. No, I had no follow-up, except that I thought that what you were talking about was one of the follow-ups that would be of value to this committee. Is you had said you were working with the administration on some community meetings, and having some of this discussed at one of those meetings that you're planning, I think would benefit the work.
Thank you. Absolutely. Any other committee members have questions? Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up about requirement number 9, where it breaks it out in the data.
Yes.
Last month, we had a grand total of 87, and then this month we had 64. So it should be at 154, if my math would be correct, but we're showing that year to date, we're at 137. And so I was hoping that administration would just comment on that. And then also, given the numbers, like how are we seeing this in comparison to the demographics of our students? Are we seeing a narrowing of disproportionality, or is it still about the same?
Thank you. Administration.
Yes, Chair Taylor, members of the committee. So the numbers that you just referenced, last month when we came in October, it had the first 2 weeks of October in it. Now going forward, we're always going to do the 1st to the 30th, and we wanted to do that. We had to do a hard reset, otherwise this month would have only been 2 weeks. So always going forward, it'll be from the 1st to the 30th. Just this first one did have a little overlap. So you're correct that those wouldn't add up, but by default they wouldn't. In terms of correlating over to our demographics, we are currently at 65% plus or minus of our referrals and other data points being written for Black students. So it is lower than last year. It is still higher than our district enrollment, which is 51%. Based off of these 137 year-to-date referrals, we're at about 65% of them being written for Black students.
Okay. Vice Chair O'Halloran.
I have no follow-up at this time.
All right, thank you. I just want to speak quickly because I know we have other items. But OCR is something that is going to take work. And I know it's a saying that it's been heard so many times, all hands on deck. And I truly want the community to feel like they are a part of this, as of the students and the families. I know last month we asked the administration that we wanted monthly reports. And I believe as we grow and enhance that, the reporting, I hope will begin to show the things that are not just planned, but things that are changing. Some of it immediately and some of it would be longer term, but that we are all working at it together for the betterment of our students. When I hear the numbers about the referrals, that is something that kind of goes off to say at 65 or 65%, because at one point I believe someone saw the report and reached out and they thought they were saying 65 suspensions, but it was 65 referrals. And given we in COVID, and I understand about classroom management and things that have to happen, but as adults, we are dealing with a pandemic. And so when I think about our young people, how they are dealing with a pandemic while going to virtual school, and some of all of the other things that happen inside of the home that we may not know of, and things that are happening out in society, I'm wondering, how do we bridge that gap so that we're being more helpful, and it doesn't seem like it's more harmful sometimes, the things that are sometimes out of our control, but that we're coming together to do this work. And so as I look forward, and one of the reasons I actually asked for OCR to continue to come to PACE, because I wanted this to be a conversation for parents in the community, as well as the administration, to make sure that we're all inclusive and we're being transparent. And I know we had, speakers tonight, and I've heard of some emails. I haven't been able to get to all of them. But that we're open and available to see how do we work together, and to know that it will take some time. And I know some things should happen immediately, and it seems like it's taking longer. But let's see how we work together, because in the end, when we all work together, our students win. And when I think about the babies, and I call them all babies because of what age they are, um, one of the reasons I stayed in education, because of our babies, and how they just pull on your heartstrings. And so I'm hoping with the OCR, it becomes more than just a pathway to success. It becomes something that we do each and every day to ensure that we're doing right by our students and family and community. And so I just want to thank the administration, and I'm looking forward to us diving deeper into details. And one thing that I did hear that I think would be great, because I'm a visual learner as well too, that he gave detailed step by step, but for some people, having that visual on the screen or that presentation does help some people to see it more in living color, what we're saying, or steps and things of that nature. So I'm hopefully next month we can have a visual that's added to the update as well to administration. See head shaking. Okay. Any more questions or comments from committee members? Thank you, Madam Secretary. I believe this is just an update report, so no action is needed.
That is correct.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, the next item, please.
Item number 2 is a report with possible action on the Black and Latino Male Achievement, the BLMA. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Administration.
Yes, Chair Taylor and members of the board, this evening we're prepared to share our progress and items on the horizon related to the Black and Latino Male Achievement Department, their priorities and their strategies. At this time, I will ask Mr. Jeremiah Jackson, the Director of the Department of Black and Latino Male Achievement, to begin the presentation, and after we will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. So good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the committee. My name is Jeremiah Jackson, and I'm currently the Director for the Black and Latino Male Achievement Department, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. What I would say is that as a department, we've been working to align all of our work to make sure that it fits within the 5 priority areas for success for the district. And I would say that primarily the first 3, like with the work that we've been currently engaged in, I would say that this is probably like where our work most strongly fits right now. In terms of our mission and vision statements, the thing that I would just have you all to know is that, you know, we're hoping and working to help ensure that all students are successful, but we really want to make sure that our Black and Brown students are successful. You know, we really want to help them to know who they are and to be proud of who they are. We want to help students attain the education that they have a right to have and help them be who it is that they have a right to be. And we want to collaboratively work to remove any barriers or obstacles that lie in the way of the success of our students. For the sake of this update tonight, our department has 5 priority strategy areas. And so I'll just be giving a brief update on these 5 here. So the Manhood Development Academies, Improving School Culture and Climate, BLMA Mentoring, Recruitment and Retention of Black and Latino Male Teachers, and Positive Narrative Change campaign efforts. Starting off with the Manhood Development Academies, we currently are partnering with 4 schools, Audubon Middle School, Lincoln Center of the Arts, South Division High School, and Washington High School. And through those 4 courses, at least those 4 course offerings at those schools, currently working with 220 students. We regularly meet on a weekly basis with staff and provide them with support and feedback to those 4 instructors. And we've also scheduled quarterly meetings with those teachers and their principals at their respective schools just to make sure the work is on track. Like one thing that I would say is that we're hoping to expand to at least 1 additional site for the 2021-22 school year. And we're also in the early phases of looking at how we might possibly expand the manhood course into more of an academy model. Some of the things that we'd like the students to be able to receive would be some service learning opportunities, and just if we can make a package that would help the students towards graduation. A brief just overview of the students that we currently have enrolled in the course. 76% of the students are Black, 20% are Latino. And the thing I just wanted to point out about the course, it's not specific or only for Black and Brown students. And you can see that we do have some other students that have shown up and they're representing the course. And so just wanted to share that. Our second piece is improving school culture and climate. Right now, as a department, we're in the process of developing multiple levels of engagement points for staff in the district. I mean, we do understand that staff carry like a lot of the culture, and so we want to provide opportunities to work with staff. The 3 levels of engagement that we're currently working on are providing some courses in LMS that would be self-directed. The second level, trying to develop some 60 to 90-minute professional development sessions for teams or staff, like within the buildings. And the third level would be a deeper dive into some school-specific, some technical assistance that we provide, like as a department, where we walk alongside the schools and some specific teams, the school culture and climate team, more specifically, to identify root causes and hopefully get at the point of identifying some of the challenges that exist. But we don't want to stop there. What we want to do are really look to provide opportunities and seek those opportunities out and begin to create some action plans that we can actualize and move forward with. Like as related to the school culture teams, we're hoping that we'll be able to create cycles where we can work with more schools than the 4 that we're currently engaged with right now. Right now, we're working with Lincoln Center of the Arts, like Milwaukee School of Languages, Transition High School, and Washington High School, and working on developing the school culture teams and doing more of that deeper dive. And so our goal is to ultimately improve school culture and climate. Third piece, our third area is the BLMA mentoring. What I would say is that back in March, the team pivoted to moving everything virtual for the first Thursday mentor luncheon meetings as an opportunity to continue to provide space for the young men to have conversations and talk about the things that they were facing. We as a team decided to make that pivot once again in July to ensure that we created space for the students to continually have that space to talk about the things that were challenging them, the things that they were facing in a productive way. And so what came out of actually working with the 7 schools that we've worked with in the past, right now currently working with Bradley Tech, like Milwaukee School of Languages, North Division, Riverside, South Division, Vincent, and Washington High Schools. What came out was that the students wanted more opportunities to engage in conversation. And so what we were able to do is to create a third Thursday meeting that would be school specific to give the young men an additional point to have conversations with the school. And so each site has about 35 students that are in the mentoring program. And just a couple of things on the horizon for us. We're hoping that we'll be able to develop and build out our ambassador program. Those are our young leaders. And the second thing that we'd really like to be able to do is create some opportunities for near-peer mentoring, where we can have some of the older students serve as mentors to our younger learners. And so one thing that I would also add is that we're hoping to at least add 1 additional mentoring site for the 2021-22 school year. The fourth effort area would be an equity effort as it relates to the recruitment and retention of Black and Latino male teachers. We believe that all teachers have the ability to do great work and educate all of our children. However, we also want to make sure that we're putting teachers in front of the students who look like the students as well. We're in the process right now of, in the early phases of looking to try to see if we can conduct a small study concerning our Black and brown male teachers in the district, as an effort to understand their journeys and their experiences as a teacher, and hoping that we can use some of that information to inform what happens with hiring and the retention of our, male teachers of color. One thing that we would like to do as a department is to create a professional arm, an affiliate arm, where Black and brown and staff of color males have an opportunity to be a part of this professional affiliate, where we can hopefully come together at regular intervals to share information and support one another. Just wanted to point out some of the partnerships and collaborations that we're currently engaged with as a department, both internal and external to the district. One that I would like to highlight, though, is the Pregnant and Parenting Youth Fatherhood Bridge Program. We're currently working with expecting and parenting males in the district, and our first session is actually tomorrow. So we're really looking forward to being able to provide support to that demographic and that part of our population. So we're looking forward to that work that begins tomorrow. The fifth area is our positive narrative change campaign. We've partnered for the last couple of years with the Art Start Portrait Project. You'll get a chance to see a little bit of that on the next slide, but I just wanted to also point out that we're also looking for some additional ways that we can help provide these positive narrative change opportunities for the students. I had a chance to go to some of the Art Start portrait projects when they were doing the shootings, like the portrait shoots, and it was actually really impactful and powerful to see the young men feeling proud about who they were, like learning a little bit about their culture, to have an opportunity to display that. It was really rewarding, and just to see the kids light up, it was really good to see. Here are a couple examples of some of the Art Start portrait pieces. Now, this isn't the actual portrait, so what they had a chance to do was to engage in some interviews to learn more about the young men. They were able to take that information and sort of work with the young men to develop a portrait. And so they're not here, but what we can actually do are link the videos at a point to where you can log in and actually see the video shorts, and they're pretty inspiring, and you'll be able to get a chance to see the actual portraits as well. As a department, just a couple updates. As a department, extremely appreciative of the fact that we were able to receive an underfilled position for the department. Secondly, the team we do our best to try to be as proactive as possible and also restorative, but we understand that things do happen. And so as we prepare for students to return, we want to make sure that we're working with the restorative practices team to create a rapid response protocol and plan for working with schools that experience unique challenges involving our students. That's something that we're in the early phases of developing now. Thirdly, the administration is working to bring youth guidance, the BAM program, so becoming a man, to the district, and we'll continue to be in conversations around that. And last but not least, the district is exploring how to provide some similar supports to our girls. And so there's the possibility of adding another position to our team to begin that work of understanding how we can support our girls more effectively. And with that, that will conclude my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, administration. Let me ask first if we have any public comments on this before I go to committee members. Madam Secretary.
Madam Chair, we do have 2 individuals registered on the platform to speak on this item.
All right, thank you. Let's let them speak.
Would you like to go to the speakers right away?
Yes, yes.
Okay, the first speaker on the platform would be Larry Hoffman. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Larry Hoffman, Hoffman. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Okay. I support Micah's testimony on this item, and I'm glad that the PACE committee is looking at it. Mr. Jackson's report was encouraging. I have seen in person some of the well-done activities of the Black and Latino Male Achievement Program, including that Art Start program. But I'm concerned about the integrity of the program. It has lost some excellent leadership, and I don't know whether the current leadership is getting the support they need so that they can carry on the ideas and programs that their predecessors were working on and adding their own ideas. I wonder whether the BLMA staff are collaborating regularly with the discipline manager and the equity office, as they are supposed to be doing. And lastly, I've heard that a paid consultant might be brought in to revamp the program. I'd really like to know what that's about. Seems like the work that the previous leaders did may go out the window if that happens. I hope the board is on top of this development if indeed it's true. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Jane Audette. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Jane Audette, Audette. Chair
Thank
Taylor,
you.
members of the committee, and Superintendent Posley. This evening, I wanted to just share my support for the BLMA work on the Manhood Development Academies. that this is an evidence-based practice that's currently under study with Loyola University Chicago. Actually, I think that study is at least partially supervised by one of our proud used to be school psychologists, with plans for expansion beyond the 4 current schools that they're serving. This work is being developed in Milwaukee in MPS and could actually become a national model for empowering Black and Latino males in our schools. The course is supported by many Black leaders in our community, and it's a source of pride. This update indicates that the MPS administration may be considering bringing in an outside group to doing some of the same work. Funding really needs to remain with the work that MPS is already committed to. And this is why I think that MPS has invested years of work in this particular program. MPS staff have committed their time and considerable passion. This proposal may be demoralizing for them. The PACE committee must assure support and funding for MPS educators currently doing this work, as well as supporting the schools that have already committed to supporting the Manhood Academy courses. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that completes the public testimony on this item.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Any committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Vice Chair O'Halloran, also was that Director Woodward, was your hand up or no? Okay, so Vice Chair O'Halloran, and next will be Director Woodward. In that order, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair Taylor. As to this outside consultant or the contract that's under consideration, do we have a timeline for when that would be brought back to the board? And how will that be evaluated before we act on it?
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, that is some plans that we have in works. BAM is a research-based program that has shown progress all over the country. One of the areas that we looked at was Boston and Seattle, as well as the Chicago Public Schools, an outstanding piece. And that is not something that we will possibly be bringing back to the board on whether, to move forward with that particular piece, that the cost is lower than the threshold that comes to the board for approval. So that is something that I think a research-based piece that we know that works and want to see what we can do to help support our young people as they progress forward.
Thank you. Vice Chair O'Halloran, any follow-up?
Not at this time.
Thank you. And I just want to, for the record, to be transparent, my son has an organization called BAM, and I just want to be really transparent because I share it on social media. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. Just because I'm on a school board, I would like people to know that. And it's called Becoming a Man LLC. And he's an MPS student, but he created this like a couple years ago. So it has nothing to do with this organization that we're talking about. So I just wanted to make sure I said that on the record. Director Woodward, please. She doesn't look to be muted, but I cannot hear her.
Director Woodward, your headset, make sure your microphone is pulled a little bit closer to your mouth.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I would like for him to explain to me, what does he see having more African American and people of color teaching the majority of the students, which are African people of color? What would that, having more people look like them, do for those students?
Administration.
That's what it was.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, we understand that our demographics, about about 80% of our students in the district are Black or brown students right now. And like when it comes, and it's not to take away from the teachers that they have currently, you know, one of the things that we want to do in terms of instilling a sense of pride in the students and also so they understand what's possible is just to create space so we can have teachers of color who look like the students, so they can look up in their classroom and see somebody who looks like them. Simply, that's it.
Okay, to
And
follow
also to provide support to those teachers so that they stay. So it's not enough just to recruit, but we have to be making efforts to retain as well.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you. Director
Follow up.
Ward? Absolutely.
Yes. Do you see also that may be one that help them with their discipline and self-esteem? Do you see that could be a possibility?
Chair Taylor and the committee, I would definitely say yes to that. I would definitely say yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other committee members have any, Director Baez?
Yes, I had a question. Could Mr. Jackson please elaborate a little bit more on the idea of the academy as a model? The context is that, you know, we've been asking through our meetings and our committees for the district to do a lot more in terms of issues related to ending the disproportionality, addressing racism, and many things related to ethnic studies and creating courses of ethnic studies. And there's so much that the curriculum can handle in terms of adding all that up. I mean, I can imagine teachers in schools trying to find the time to do all of these things. Not that I don't believe that we should give teachers more time to do this, but right now we have to live with a certain amount of time. So the idea of the academy sort of like raised an issue in my mind. It's necessary that we do these courses. It's necessary that we elaborate on things that will help particularly Black and Latino males, etc. But how is that to be done? I mean, are there courses related to this? Is the academy an add-on, or should it be integrated into what we do as a district? Could you please elaborate on that?
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, we're in the process in the early stages of just beginning to explore what may be possible. We understand that if there's anything that we can do to support our students and help them to progress towards graduation, we want to be able to do that. Right now, the courses are well, I think they're listed as elective courses right now. But the goal would be if we can actually move those courses into actual credit towards graduation, that would be something that we'd like to be able to do. Like on the other hand, we'd also like for the courses to have some progression with them. So it's not just, you know, just this like elective course. We really want the course to be able to build on top of itself and provide the young men like with the opportunities that they need. Like we talked about providing opportunities for service learning. Like how can we incorporate that into, you know, what we're doing, like career exploration? How do we give kids the opportunity to be exposed to the trades so they can get some hands-on experience? It's a lot of things that we want to be able to do outside of that traditional set, but we want to just begin the conversation and begin to explore and see what's possible.
Director Baez.
Second question. My second question goes to, in your report, you speak about teacher pathways, developing, you know, projects, courses, etc., that help students select teaching as a profession, particularly Black and Latino males teach. But there's again, it goes to the issue of the silos. There is some proposals in this presentation that makes sense, okay? But are they being done in coordination and an alignment with what some schools are already doing? So I know that South Division High School, for example, because it's in my district, is working towards producing a more elaborate teacher path for, and that pathway has to do with a lot of courses that will have to be coordinated with MATC, UWM, and other institutions so that students can get credit, college credit for taking those courses. To what extent is the idea of teacher pathways, which I think is a good idea, okay, is being aligned and coordinated? Because when I saw your list of internal MPS collaboration, your list of external collaborations, it's not really all there. Like in the same way that, well, you don't have the OCR piece there. I think that we need alignment with all of those activities that are intended to significantly reduce and change the issue of racism in our schools. And I agree with the superintendent. This is not going to be done overnight. This is going to take time. But that coordination, that avoidance of silos, okay? How, as you think about teacher preparation, how are you aligning that with folks that are already thinking on the lines of teacher preparation for everybody, okay? And this will deal particularly with Black and Latino males, but how is it integrated into those things or aligned with those things? If you could speak to that.
Administration.
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, we're in the process right now of really beginning to start those conversations, and we're not looking to, work or operate in silos. Like, I definitely see the opportunities to work across departments and to try to work together collaboratively. I mentioned that in order for us to really understand sort of where we are currently, we wanted to engage in some work and some study to really understand who's before our children right now, who's in the district right now, and to understand their path, how they ended up in the district as a teacher. And we want to be able to support them in that effort. And so one of the things that we're hoping that information will be useful to and for would be HR. So as we continue to recruit teachers of color, that we at least have some baseline information to help us to try to move forward with that effort. I would also say that, working with Dr. Cotton and others to identify places and spaces and opportunities that we can collaborate around these issues, we started those conversations as well. And so we're in the process. The goal is to not be doing this as a one-off or as just our department solely. Like, we really want to integrate what we're doing into the fabric of what's possible here in MPS.
Director Baez.
Oh, thank you. That answers my concern. I just wanted to put it out there because I was thinking as I read the report and as I heard the testimonies, that we need to make sure that we avoid all these silos and we bring it all together. Okay.
Absolutely. And for the Black and Latino male achievement, I know I asked this before in a pre-meeting, but just to ask it publicly, given where we at with a lot of our students being at home and virtually, are we thinking about doing anything where there is a drop-in virtual site that these males can come to in order to maybe even talk about challenges? We talk a lot about mental health and how it affects our babies at this time. Are we thinking about doing something like that throughout the school day where there can be a drop-in session for these young males?
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, we're in the process, like I said, of identifying and creating those third Thursday opportunities for the kids that are involved in the mentoring. So outside of just that third Thursday and the first Thursday, we want to make the opportunity available for students to be able to connect on that school level with their mentors in the building, with their coordinators. They're locally there in the building. And so the other thing that I would also add is that for the students that are involved in the Manhood Academy courses, their instructors are available to them. Like, they can reach them through email, through office hours, like whenever they need to get in contact with them, they have a way to do so. And we try to make sure that they are available to be responsive to the needs of the students. I would also say that as a department, we can definitely look into how we can expand the office hours district-wide. It would be my hope that through that professional arm of BLMA that we could have Black and brown male educators throughout the district who students could reach out to when they needed things as well. So I'm hoping that we can create ways that we can support our students, pretty much like whenever they need it.
Thank you. Two more things. The next thing is I am excited to see the parenting aspect for our young males, and that we are looking to do something with our young ladies. I feel like sometimes we don't always have other things for them, and having something to this magnitude can be a great thing. And for the parenting thing, I know the first one starts tomorrow. Is this going to be something that is monthly for these young individuals? As well, are we also, I heard you talk about trades or jobs, are we then connecting them with either employment opportunities or things of that nature as well?
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, what we try to do as a department is to include student voice as much as possible. And so we believe that those who are most affected by the issue should have a seat at the table, right? And so we want to use the first session tomorrow to really learn from the young men. What are they hoping to be able to get out of the space so that we can tailor that program to fit their needs? We'll be meeting right now. The plan is to meet monthly, but if it becomes apparent or it's needed that we would like to meet more frequently, then we'll definitely explore that as well.
All right, thank you. Any other committee members have any questions or comments for this item? Hearing none, I would like to say thank you. And definitely this is a department we want to see grow, and I'm looking forward to the updates that will come along as well too.
Great job, man.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item on the agenda is item number 3, a report with possible action regarding equity, access, and inclusion. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Administration.
Chair Taylor and members of the board, we end this evening's agenda with an update related to the Department of Equity, Access, and Inclusion. At this time, I will ask Dr. Ellis to begin her presentation. Dr. Ellis.
Good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the committee. My name is Patricia Ellis, and I serve as the Interim Director of Equity, Access, and Inclusion. This evening, I will be providing the quarterly report for the Department of Equity, Access, and Inclusion. Next slide. All work in the Department of Equity, Access, and Inclusion is aligned to the district's 5 priorities for success. For the purpose of this report, we are specifically focusing on the following priorities: increase academic achievement and accountability, develop our staff, and strengthen communication and collaboration. Next slide. Administrative Policy 1.06, Equity in MPS, defines equity as an allocation of district resources, supports, and opportunities that is based on the needs of students and staff. This definition of equity is used to guide the department's work. Next slide. However, as we continue to engage in and reflect on the diversity, intersectionality, and depth and breadth of equity based on local, national, and global events, we also acknowledge that equity work at its core is about humanity and relationships. Staff with the department leading this work include Wendy Whitley, Equity, Access, and Inclusion Specialist, Lisa Salva, RTI PBIS Supervisor, and Shauna Perry Finch, Underfield Restorative Practices Supervisor. In addition to the PBIS coaches under the supervision of Ms. Salva and Restorative Practices coaches under the supervision of Ms. Perry Finch. Next slide. We are proud to announce an Equity, Access, and Inclusion professional development series developed and facilitated by staff in Equity, Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, PBIS, and Restorative Practices. These professional development opportunities are aligned to the district's priorities for success and support intentional, ongoing, and continuous learning. They also support the school improvement plan, facilitate a multi-level system of support, assist in monitoring for fidelity of implementation, develop all staff to support a common understanding and language throughout the district, and provide synchronous and asynchronous learning to meet the diverse needs of learners, whether adults or young people. All offerings benefit our young people and include strategies, activities to engage student voice in meaningful, relevant, and collaborative ways. Interested individuals will be informed of these professional development opportunities and Thursday updates, the Learning Management System, LMS, and collegial sharing. Next slide. These professional development opportunities are intentionally and thoughtfully embedding and leveraging equity into the fabric of our culture, practice, and leadership in ways that build, support, and sustain relationships, relevance, rigor, and expectations. For in the words of Tom Atlee, although we are individual designs in the fabric, simultaneously, we are part of the fabric, connected to and defined by the whole. Equity, therefore, begins with each of us, doing our part to create unity and engage in positive change. All professional development opportunities offered look at learners through assets-based thinking, a focus on building bridges by tapping into and expanding prior knowledge, and supporting a brave space for tackling challenging ideas and or beliefs, shifting paradigms, and using reflection as a tool to strengthen engagement and practice, as emphasized by researchers such as Delpit, Noguera, Lansing Billings, Holly, Conjufa, Gay, Cohen and Garcia, Khalifa, Smith, Fry, and Douglas, and many others committed to this critically important work. 3 equity models have been developed. Module 1, building relationships through culturally and linguistically responsive practices, will allow participants to examine how they approach building relationships with culturally and linguistically diverse students, learn the meaning of cultural identity as it relates to their personal cultural attributes, and learn culturally responsive teaching strategies that build, strengthen, and sustain relationships and engagement. This module is also used for the new educators orientations that began in August. Module 2 focuses on building cultural competence. This module will allow participants to deepen their cultural awareness, examine their personal narratives, and reflect on how these narratives shape and impact how they may perceive themselves and interact with others. And Equity Module 3, Building Cultural Practices, will allow participants to explore culturally responsive practices and ways to engage in meaningful and relevant dialogue that values the voice and perspectives of all individuals. Equity Modules 2 and 3 will be available in LMS by the end of November. There are 2 positive behavioral interventions and supports PBIS offerings. The first offering, PBIS Essential Elements and Universal Supports, allows participants to build their background knowledge as it relates to the essential elements of PBIS. Learn how to use the PBIS framework to promote a positive classroom and school climate and culture, and incorporate the essential elements into their daily practice. The second offering, Creating Effective Schools and Teams, allows participants to further develop insights into reviewing meeting minutes and monthly team meeting expectations, in addition to how to implement meeting logistics, data analysis, and problem solving. Restorative Practices is offering the following 4 professional development opportunities. First, Foundations of Restorative Practices. During this offering, participants will define and develop an in-depth understanding of what it means to be restorative and how restorative practices aligns with equity and culturally responsive practices. Learn how to implement restorative practices in their daily interactions, and learn how to use restorative communication as a powerful means for engaging with students and or adults to repair, heal, and or restore relationships. This Foundations offering is a prerequisite for circle keeping and restorative keeping offerings. The second offering, Circle Keeping, will provide attendees an opportunity to learn the components of circles, experience different types of circles, and explore ways of using circles in their professional practice. Participants will also create and practice a circle agenda they can implement with students and adults. The third offering, Restorative Teaching, focuses on building classroom culture and climate. Participants will learn how to integrate restorative practices in their lesson plans and instructional practices, develop and deliver content that connects to students' lives, and utilize restorative circles to support instruction. And the fourth offering, Virtual Circles Workshop, will allow attendees to learn how to use the circle process in a virtual environment. Circle keeping is a prerequisite for this offering. Each of these professional development offerings will continue through December and may extend into June based on needs identified by staff, parents, guardians, and young people. Our sincere appreciation is extended to all who have or plan to participate in these professional development offerings. For in the words of John Manning, author of The Disciplined Leader, keeping focus on what really matters, believing in your potential, and calling upon your courage to change will fuel your professional growth and help you accomplish your goals. This concludes the department's presentation. At this time, we will be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Once again, Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have 7 pieces of written testimony, and we also have 3 individuals on the platform prepared to speak on this item tonight.
We'll take public comments first, Madam Chair, please.
So noted.
Thank you.
The first speaker on the platform would be Angela Harris. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Angela Harris, Harris, Chairwoman of the Black Educators Caucus. Good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the committee. In August of 2017, the Milwaukee School Board Directors unanimously passed an equity policy. A major part of implementing our equity policy successfully was educating our organization on what equity means. 3 years later, not only have we not established common language around words like race, racism, and racist, we absolutely have not begun to develop common language around equity or educate our organization about what that means. In districts committed to racial equity work, they have created institutional cultures where educators who resist anti-racist measures feel isolated and uneasy. Those who are least invested in racial equity work wonder if they belong. During the last 3 years of our district's equity work, the inverse typically is true. Those who are most adamant about racial equity are cast to the margins of institutional culture. They are isolated. They are often referred to as troublemakers or being too political for pointing out the harm being done to children and families of color. For Black educators like myself, we are often labeled militant or angry for telling the racial equity truth. This isn't equity, it is a failure of equity leadership. We are at a racial equity reckoning. Is our commitment to racial equity real? If the most emphatic racial equity advocates feel silenced in comparison to their equity resistant colleagues, then what we have is not an equitable institution, but a sick one. Our district equity poses no threat to racism because it fails to even name it. Racial equity work has been conflated with cultural competence, restorative practices, PBIS, and ambitious instruction. Culture is not the answer to every question. Cultural competence is important, but is no threat to racism or racial inequities. Students, families, and educators experiencing racism can't afford to wait for us to saunter toward a more urgent racial equity vision. They can't afford to wait for white educators to be eased into racial equity commitments at a pace of their choosing while they suffer consequences
30
of our
seconds.
apathy and lack of urgency in the classroom and community. Our efforts should not focus on fixing Black and Brown students' mindsets or cultures. Instead, it should focus on eliminating the racist conditions that exist in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform would be Larry Hoffman. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Larry Hoffman, Hoffman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, I support Micah's testimony on this item, and I'm glad your committee is keeping it on your radar. Dr. Ellis described a professional development plan in the area of equity. I'm concerned that the professional development in academic areas is mandatory, but in the area of bias and equity, it appears to be voluntary. And I hope someone will speak to that. I'm concerned that I don't think the board and the community are getting monthly updates on the status of the equity guidebook. We were told that the community would be involved in vetting the guidebook, at least in vetting it. If no progress is being made on the guidebook, then the administration needs to let us know. And if there have been additions or changes, the administration also needs to let us know that. And lastly, I would ask what percent of teachers and administrators are at this time skilled in the implementation of restorative practices, restorative justice, restorative teaching? And how many do you plan to have trained by the end of the school year? And I guess, to what extent does the absence of in-person instruction slow you down? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that was the last speaker on the platform.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I thought I heard 3.
Yes, and one person is not, did not join the platform, although they did register.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Are you raising your hand, Director Baez?
Director Miller was first.
All right, thank you. President Miller, then Director Baez, in that order, please.
So I guess my concern in looking at the slideshow is this issue that folks are raising around intentionality and being upfront that at the center of equity is anti-racism. So if you're going to be training our staff in cultural competency, it has to start and be very intentional and upfront that this is an anti-racist training and has to be brought forward as that. And so I guess it is a question for me is on this issue of we cannot, if we're going to address it as all hands on deck, and this is central to us, how is it that professional development on anti-racism really isn't mandatory? I think that that's a very important question that we have to figure out and respond to. It involves time, it involves intention, and it involves priority. So I guess I have to ask the administration, how do we resolve this? Because I do believe that anti-racist training and intentionality in that is at the center of what we need to be doing, whether staff is being trained in reading, in mathematics, or any other thing. That if our students don't understand their own worth, and their teachers don't understand the centrality of this issue, it makes it very hard for us to make progress.
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, one of the things that we are trying to do here is to we have right now a set timetable around PD and what we do around PD. All of the PD that we offer has been from, even with academic PD as well, has been from a opportunity where staff can start out with LMS, go through LMS, and select any type of professional development activity that they want to partake in. What we are doing is also looking and going to be in discussions with all the stakeholders around what will that look like to pivot and make changes with that particular piece, but also looking at what can be done on our banking time days. Our banking time days is something that we're looking at. I have some meetings set. We are going to look at what that and have those conversations around that particular piece as well. And right now, within a virtual setting, we are moving and trying to meet all of those needs and trying to get those things to happen. And as far as mandatory, we really, the time that is set aside on a weekly basis for staff working with the teachers and staff at the school has been geared around the ambitious instruction model and things that we do at the Professional Learning Institute. But all of those things are set in learning management system where individuals can go from a self-guided piece and also partake themselves.
President Miller, follow up.
Well, yeah, thank you. I guess the other side of what I was asking is really the issue of anti-racism wasn't part of the presentation tonight. I mean, I think we need to have ongoing discussion around professional development, but if you could talk about the presentation, why, when we talk about equity, it seems to me anti-racism has to be the starting point. Can you address that?
Administration.
Administration.
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, in regard to your question regarding anti-racism, I failed to mention that as a part of the first module that focuses in on culturally and linguistically responsive practices, individuals will engage in conversations around race, and that would include racism, around language and culture, around building relationships with intentionality. Again, that is also very much so connected to anti-racism. In addition to really having a shared understanding of language and who we are individually and collectively as people. Because in addition to just focusing in on anti-racism, we also have to take a look at culture. One of the things that our young people have shared on many occasions is that we need to be mindful of who is actually presenting anti-racism types of information to them. Their concern is sometimes that can create more harm than good for our students. And so we want to make sure that we are being very thoughtful. We're being very intentional about what we're doing, because the last thing we want to do as a part of this work is create more stress and more harm for our children.
President Miller and Chair Taylor, members of the board, one of the things that we have in place right now is that we are working on a plan for our mandatory PD plan, and that's taken a look at this whole thing around academics, around equity, and bringing all of those things together under that particular piece. But along with that, we are in conversation with an author that has spearheaded this work and seeing what we can do to get support in here, because one of the things that we want to be able to do is to have some support from outside support, someone that's coming in that is not a part of the organization, that can really take a look at what's happening and talk about what needs to happen, where we need to go. And we are talking right now in conversations with Glenn Singleton around some of that work around courageous conversations and around race. So looking at where we go there, and we want to make sure that when this is done the correct way, as Dr. Ellis has alluded to.
Thank you for that. And I'll just interject. I know Dr. Baez is next. I often feel like sometimes we become complacent with certain type of words to ensure that no one gets offended. And being a woman of color in organizations where sometimes I was the only person of color or a couple people of color in the room, often people don't want to talk about racism because they feel like someone's going to get offended if we bring it up. But I often say that's the elephant in the room. Let's talk about it. Let's get offended. Let's get over it, and let's get to work on how do we tackle it. And so in the presentation, even though I seen some of the things that we are doing and the things that we are coming to, it seemed like there was a complacency to not mention anti-bias or racism, and probably because it may have felt like someone would get offended. But this is at the root of what the equity is and how we move forward. And so, Dr. Ellis, I truly do thank you for your work, because you jumped into something that has been going on for years and trying to come up to part to make sure that you're including everybody in it. I just want us to truly think about it and make sure that we're just continuing to dive in. And sometimes it's okay to use those words, because we do have to talk about racism and anti-bias. And I know sometimes people like to hear white fragility and not white privilege, but white privilege is real. But I do thank you for the work. And then Director Baez.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Going back to both your comment and that of President Miller, it seems to me that a recurring theme that keeps on coming to us is that, look, we're not saying the kinds of things that we should be saying, like you say, racism and the word racism. And we had a speaker that argued that we don't know where we're at in terms of that. Well, we know where we're at, except that people are not necessarily saying it. And it should be said in our professional development. It should be intentional. Restorative justice really doesn't mean much if we don't deal with anti-racism in the context of preparing people for restorative justice, okay? None of these initiatives, cultural inclusiveness, language, etc., if we do not acknowledge the anti-racism as a fact. The common thread that I hear is that people are saying to us, look, you have voluntary stuff and you have good stuff, but it's voluntary, and maybe the people that need to get it don't get it, okay? And how do we make sure that a lot of these wonderful things that we're doing are impacting everybody through mandates, a mandatory approach on how we do this? And I think that the superintendent raised the issue of the time that we have for PD and how we're doing it right now and where we're placing the priorities, because there is a mandate also at another level, saying people have to do better in reading, people have to do better in writing, people have to do better in math. Well, I could argue as an academic that I think that the way we deal with math in this country is racist. It's extremely racist. And there is a huge literature about all of that. But we continue to do it. We continue to expect our kids to go through a sequencing of mathematics that ends up becoming an inequality in itself, because it adds to the inequality by people falling out and not completing sequences, not graduating, etc. There is a direct correlation between the way we do mathematics and how people of color graduate from our high schools. So I could go there. It seems to me that we're talking here about how do we expand the amount of time we have available to really get people to buy and embrace the idea of anti-racism, of white privilege, and all of this. And I may have said this before, but it seems to me that we need to add to that time and find a way to add to that time, even if it means rethinking how we handle the time available for our instruction. We seem to fit the system into an old mode of, sort of like a factory mode, where we have so many minutes and so many days of the year where we can do this, and so many hours for professional development. More people around the world are finding time to do the type of professional development that makes sure that people that come before our kids are well prepared to do it. We should be able to do that, even if it means if we add 2 days at the beginning of the semester to handle this, or 2 days after the semester, and I'm just using some general thoughts here, if it means that we need to sit down as an administration and as a board and renegotiate with our unions what that means in terms of people's time and additional resources to be able to pay people to do that. We are looking right now, look at this past election, some of us have hope that now people are going to see education in a different light as opposed to what we had before November 3rd. But we are not putting on the table those kinds of things that are incredibly necessary in our world. So if we want more resources to be able to add hours or days to the professional development that we do, and we need to sit down with our bargaining groups and others to figure out how we do this, why don't we do it? I think we should be bold enough to do it and say, this is what it's going to cost us to transform this district, and make sure that this proportionality is not a consequence of our inability to act to transform the district. So I would just hope that we go in that route, and I would like to know how the administration feels about doing that. If you have a board that wants to support that, I think that everybody on the board will support the idea of more professional development. I hope that we don't get into that. So if we're willing to support you in getting more resources and time for professional development, what do we need to do?
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, I want to be totally transparent that we have been, the administration and the various unions in question have been in dialogue, in constant dialogue about this. Is not anything new. This is something that we've been talking about, looking at how we move forward. And I talked about earlier, some options was looking at banking time days and things of this nature. We have also entertained the option of how do you make things happen within a few set days around the district and those kinds of things. But one of the big things that we have to do and to make sure, and what we're trying to shore up, is that we want to have a expert in this area to be a critical friend to the work that we're embracing and doing. We all have ideas about anti-racist, anti-bias, and we could lay out a number of different things. Anyone that you talk to in the organization could provide information, could provide some type of professional development opportunity. But what we want to do is move in the same direction together. And in order to do that, we are engaging in conversation with someone that can help lead us through this work as well, to be that outside critical friend to support us and has a research proven track record around this work. And what we don't want to do, and if this is not done right, as Dr. Ellis has said, this could be something that could blow up and cause some major issues within the organization. And so what we're trying to do is to educate, to inform, to help support individuals in areas so that they can meet the needs of our students. And so all of those things that we talked about tonight, as far as pulling together, we are all on board to do just that.
Thank you. Director Baez, any follow-up? Then I did see Director Miller, I believe, and maybe Director Woodward.
Other people should talk, okay? I have
Thank
crazy ideas about this, okay?
Thank you. Director Miller, because you went already, I thought I saw Director Woodward. I'll call on her and see, and then follow back. Director Woodward, was that a hand up? No? Okay. Director Miller.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in response to what Dr. Ellis said. First of all, Dr. Ellis, I totally appreciate the work that you've done and want to commend you on that. I don't want it to in any way diminish that. I'm a big fan and supporter. But when you talk about if you have certain people doing this work, it can cause more damage than good. Absolutely, I've seen it happen, and I totally understand what you're saying. And we don't want this. We don't want those sorts of setbacks with our students. But I do think at the level that we're having this discussion, at the level of the board and the administration, as Director Taylor said, we have to identify at the root of equity work is anti-racism. We have to identify that at this level. The issue of carrying it out and how we train all of our teachers. I don't want to send some, teacher that's scared to death to talk about race and racism in front of a group of kids, and set that work back. But I do want to train them, and so we do have to identify it at our level and make it very clear. And from my opinion.
Thank you. Administration, any follow-up for that?
Chair Taylor and committee, just thank you so much for your feedback, and we will be more explicit in language moving forward.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions from committee members? Okay, seeing none, thank you for the presentation and update. Look forward to seeing more and how we all come together to definitely tackle this work that is very well needed within our district. Madam Secretary, next item.
Madam Chair, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
I would like to thank all of the public comments and speakers and those who tuned in for the November PACE meeting. Thank you. Stay in tune, stay safe, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye to all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.